Okay, let's start our 2022 annual general meeting, or all gathering momentum, as we prefer to call our time together. Welcome to everyone. We have every continent, I think, nearly represented on the call, and it's so good of you. I know some of you, it's middle of the night, it's dark, there's sunshine, there's snow, there's every wonderful seasonal variation and also variation in people. It's really so good to see you. Thank you for joining us. So what are we going to do? This AGM, we'll update on our progress over the year. We'll share our current financial position and our intentions to 2023 with you in the spirit of transparency and openness. And we'll highlight a number of incredible emergent possibilities that are on the horizon. Our sincere thanks go to you all our partners and all our associates on this call and beyond, who've taken it upon yourselves to amplify global responsibility. And now is such an important time for that to happen, and more than ever in our ever-changing and complex environment. And despite all the challenges and the context in which you operate, you continue to cross boundaries and what would seem to be previously impenetrable barriers to activate positive change and impact in our shared landscape. What has helped the core team of John, Anders and myself over the last year to stay steady has been a Margaret Mead quote, which I'll share with you if I may. Never believe that a few caring people can't change the world, for indeed, that's all we ever have. So it wouldn't be a GRLI AGM without the opportunities for saying hello and contacting and making a connection. But in line with partner feedback, and especially within a virtual environment, the focus on this meeting will be on update on the GRLI, including governance, and most importantly, as a result of the deepening and trusting relationships that have been forged over time, and particularly over the last year, an amplification of what's been happening and a preview of what's coming towards us. John.
Thank you very much, Claire, and also from my side, welcome to everyone. It's wonderful to see you all and to have people joining us from around the globe for this AGM. I just want to make sure, can everyone see my screen? Okay. We have our meeting in two parts today. The past to present, which is what we will spend on the next 50 minutes or so. And then we'll have a short break. And then we will look into the future. What we thought we would do, seeing as that there are a number of new faces, as well as some people who perhaps haven't connected in a while, is to do a short getting up to speed session, which is just an overview of the why, what, how, and who of the GRLI. Then I'll do a brief review of the year. And then moving us or bridging us into the future is a brief financial update. And then when we come back, we will deal with governance, updates on initiatives, and then a further breakout. We will also have an opportunity shortly just to connect and reconnect with each other in small breakouts. With that, then, in terms of getting up to speed, or GUT as we used to call it, or as we still call it then, I thought I'd just start here. The reason we have this meeting is we are a foundation for public benefit, so we are legally required to call an annual general meeting of the members of the foundation. And of course, those members are the partners and associates of the GRLI. We've decided to rename it to All Gathering Momentum. And I'm sure you will see today that we continue to gather momentum, and looking ahead at next year, certainly that seems to be the case. So where have we been? Where are we now, and what lies ahead? Keep in mind, please, also for future events like this, that it is you, our partners and associates, who shape the work of the GRLI. So the material that was prepared today is with input from any of you, and we'll definitely hear from more than just myself. Very briefly then, the GRLI exists to catalyze the development of global responsibility in leadership and practice. And it does that through an ongoing, collaborative and action-oriented inquiry that's held by this globally engaged network of partners and associates, of course, also supported by our strategic partners. What we do, we take initiative individually, collectively, we experiment, we learn, share learning within, but also increasingly beyond the GRI. And for those of you who are not familiar with it yet, in terms of the what we do, we've been maintaining for the last 2 years a dashboard externally that basically contains the key pathways of our work, which are those 5 that are listed on the screen, and that also contains the various actions that supports those pathways. We revise and revisit those from time to time, and the understanding and the intention would be that coming out of today's meeting, again, we will have some confirmation or some reprioritization, or perhaps some additional actions that needs to be added to the dashboard. That's also in the interest of transparency of our work and really to serve the wider landscape. Who is the GRI? It's, of course, it's our partners and our associate partners. You may recall that last year we agreed that we will increase the number of full institutional partners to 30. We are looking to recruit 5 additional partners from the non-business school kind of groups. At the moment, we have 23 of a maximum of 30 potential partners. And then, of course, associate partners, that is a route towards partnership. Currently, we have 15 institutes that associate with the GRLI's work. And we're very glad to have welcomed this year a number of new associate partners. Some of them have been involved in the Dean's Cohort for a number of years and are now stepping up to align institutionally with the GRLI's agenda. And then, of course, there's a growing number of individuals who associate with our work. And then we have our foundational partners in EFMD and AACSB. Of course, our founding partners being EFMD and UN Global Compact. And then more recently, our more facilitative strategic partner, represented here today by Sophie. And I'm not sure if Caroline's here. I think she may be joining us as well. Of course, from Oikos International. Beyond that, we recognize that we are part of a wider landscape. So we've been maintaining this ecosystem map, recognition of the fact that our work exists within this wider ecosystem. We don't necessarily have formal agreements with all of these entities, but their work is typically either relevant to, complementary to our agenda, or we have or are or were cooperating with them at some point. Of course, it's by no means complete, so your input and additions will be welcomed, and we really rely on our partners and associates to help connect the dots within the landscape. You'll see one of our initiatives for next year around a webinar for globally responsible management education. We would ideally like various networks and initiatives to co-own, co-endorse that. And the way we do that is through you who are already connected into the various networks and initiatives in the landscape. Yeah, so I thought it would be worthwhile just to acknowledge that we are part of that wider landscape. Closer to the kind of the core of the operations, we have, just very briefly, we have Marietta, who is also on the call today. She's based here in George with me, but in a different building to me, because we have what's called load shedding. In other words, we don't always have electricity, and I have solar backup and she has a generator backup, so we're just trying to minimize the risk there. We also have in Brussels a wonderful team that many of you may have dealt with previously, Angela, Andre Fizon, and Delphine, who look after our finances, our accounting, our bookkeeping, our audits, etc. And then for a number of years, and we were sad to say goodbye to her earlier this year, Claire Summer, who's been supporting our communication work, but of course who remains a friend of the GRLI and is always welcome. At the core kind of convening side of things, of course, Claire, who's been playing a very active role as chair, myself, and then our founding Secretary General, Anders Aspling. And then we also have, seeing as our courageous conversations are now becoming an institution, We've asked Lana and Chris to continue playing a role there. And so it's wonderful to have them. We'll hear from them a little bit later. Earlier this year, we ran a program for the first time, which we called the Fellows. It grew out of something that we discussed last year around internship, and we realized we need a little bit more than interns. We need someone who's a little bit more experienced. So we had some fellows join us between June and October, just for a trial run on a very part-time basis. And Tamina Jahan is going to most likely continue still into next year. But that's something that we want to continue to grow. With the amount of activity within the GRLI, the number of connections we maintain, we definitely need more capacity. And so we're thinking that the fellowship model may be a way of building more capacity. And then, of course, we have our advisors, some of whom are on the call. And that's a group that basically advises the GRLI office. Separate to this, of course, there's the governance. We're going to talk about that later. But I wanted to just acknowledge a few kind of key individuals that are playing a role at the core. But then really it's you. So this is an opportunity for the next 20 minutes to connect and reconnect with some of our partners and associates around the globe. And we will do so in groups of 4 to 5. Our suggested opening check-in for this round is basically just to do a brief round of introductions and then to share how your involvement with the GRLI is creating impact for you, your institution, and the wider landscape. So again, coming back to the me, we, all of us framing of the GRLI, of our understanding of global responsibility, we want to suggest that we use that as a way of checking in. So I'm just going to stop sharing the screen and we'll quickly open the rooms for a check-in. It's now 14:21, so we'll open it for 19 minutes and then we'll come back. Great, thank you very much. Matthew, if I'm not mistaken, I have at least 2 recordings of previous GRLI meetings where you admonish me for closing the breakout room.
I do apologize, John.
In the middle of it.
Good order. But we had a really nice chat, I have to say.
That's good. Welcome back, everyone. So what we want to do now is just give an opportunity in case there's anything immediately emerging from your opening check-in that will be useful for all of us to hear. There's no obligation, and we're not looking for feedback from all the groups. It's just in case there's anything emergent and immediate that you would like to share. And please pop when you're hot if there's anything. Okay.
I'll throw in a big one, which was we just had a little discussion about how people in business schools, in academia and so on, are almost facing an existential crisis, which is like, how do we make an impact in the world? Are we making impact? So these are big questions, and I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Wayne.
No, and I'll just add, John, from Daria at Oikos, that there is now a really strong student voice that's saying, is this good enough? And this is a real reflection on what schools are teaching and how they do it. Because there is a large voice out there saying, hang on a minute, this isn't quite what we were due to have. And to add to Wayne, the despair and the hope, and obviously we don't want to be too despair, but it's a big reflection on where we're going as organizations and institutions and what people have for the expectations of what's provided.
We had a good discussion of how to incentivize faculty and our students for this journey, and so get the organization behind it. I thought that was also, and we got into a fair amount of detail on that, so I don't want to repeat that here, but it was a good discussion.
There's an invite. If you have any notes or reflections on this, please put it into the chat. We're recording the call, but we're also looking at the notes afterwards. So if there's any thoughts that you'd like to ensure is captured, please just paste them in the chat. And keep those thoughts, because a number of things that all 3 of you have just mentioned are featuring in the second half of our meeting, in terms of potential initiatives or ongoing initiatives. Let me just check, is there anyone else before we move on? And please speak up because I'm struggling to see everyone on screen, so just speak up.
I think one of the things that came up for us was that if we don't get the faculty to understand what's important, they aren't shifting their behavior, the issues that they're raising with the students, therefore we don't get the traction.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Danielle.
and can I build on Danielle? Because Wayne and I, funnily enough, this morning had a conversation about why sustainability is failing. And I think there are a number of topics, and one that Julia just mentioned in our conversation about rankings and measures, and academia very often being an echo chamber. I think, Wayne, based on your points from this morning, we need to look, I think, together at the system and what some of the enablers are to make, to Danielle's point, our work simpler. And I think there are a number of topics that we could work on together. One is measures, for example, which is very close to my heart. But there might be others. And it would be valuable, I think, to have a topic exchange on specific points, if anyone is interested.
Correct. Thanks, Artie. Thank you very much.
I thought Adrian brought up a great point about our need to change in terms of shifting what we do, that there is a lot more faculty that are engaged with the topic of sustainability. We are talking about the economists, myself personally shifting, but now we need to do action. And the conversation in our room was that that's harder. It's a higher call that requires a change in what we're doing. And instead of talking, the action is now. So.
Excellent. Correct. And what we'll do in the second breakout a bit later is I'm going to try and keep the rooms as they are. I can't always promise that, but if you really want to maintain those conversations, we can try and keep them. I want to suggest that we move on just in the interest of time. So let me quickly just put up my screen. This is not entirely comprehensive. It's just a snapshot of some of the things that were underway this year. Number of advocacy initiatives, and interestingly enough, that very first forum that I spoke at, which is called the GRLI Forum, was actually hosted in Russia, which, looking back on it, was a very ominous time to be involved in that particular conversation. But what we spoke about was globally responsible management education, and I think the time is very much here for us to ask ourselves, what does that now look like, given where the world's at? A number of other initiatives, the Global Governance Summit, a number of events at HESI. And I noticed in the chat that Jean-Christophe has just posted a link to the assessment work that is ongoing with HESI. So that also links up with some of the feedback that we're hearing from the opening check-in. Continued work with ASSB's affinity groups. And of course, that will continue. And then on the knowledge development side, just some of the highlights. We had the Responsible Leadership Conference that was hosted by Stellenbosch in partnership with a few others on the call, including Emerald. We published 4 issues of the Journal of Global Responsibility, or the team did, I should say. We don't publish it, but we obviously, of course, endorse it. And for what it's worth, the rating of that particular journal is now starting to become more prominent and more visible. And then, of course, Nicola and Thomas published the 2nd edition of their book on responsible leadership, if you haven't seen that. And of course, we continue to develop the dialogue series with Nicola. And then I think a very big achievement for the year, which we really need to thank our partners and associates for, because we had an incredible response from you all. Your willingness to share your learning, to reflect on your journey with the GRLI, your work not just in the GRLI but also in other contexts and spaces. For instance, our colleagues from Australia came together with some of our alumnus partners, did a report on management education in their context, and to publish that Global Focus special issue, or special supplement as it's called, on the work of the GRLI. I think we could have probably done 2 special editions if Matthew allowed us, with the amount of interest that we had. So thank you also again EFMD for making that available. And I would have normally say a big round of applause to everyone who got involved in this, because I think it's going to continue to highlight and showcase our work. The collaborative actions that we saw, in particular the pilot intake of the module, I'm not going to say too much about it right now because we're going to get an update on it a bit later on what's happening next year. But we had the first intake with around 50 students, and we'll hear a short testimonial. And then on our peer learning initiatives, the cohort specifically had our first meeting in person take place at Antwerp Management School. So thank you to Stephen Haas and Wayne Visser and Katerina Podolenko and Ilse, who warmly hosted us there, and everyone who took part in that. And then, of course, the continued engagement with the network. As I mentioned, 8 new associate partners, the continuation of the courageous conversations, the partner pods. I remember we had a wonderful presentation from Carol Parks, who I don't think is able to join us today. If you look back on this year, at least from my vantage point, it's with a huge amount of gratitude and thanks for the work that our partners and associates continue to do, because we are only able to deliver and create impact through your actions. And so what I wanted to do is just share with you a short testimonial from one of the students that took part in the collaborative project. Just give me 1 second.
Hello everyone, my name is Teresa Bianca de Aguiar. I am from Porto, Portugal, and I work at LTP, which is a management consultancy company that applies business analytics within complex business problems. This year, I had the privilege of attending the course Globally Responsible Leadership. The course opened my eyes to a problem that I was poorly informed about, and it inspired me both professionally and personally. Along the 4 elective courses that I took, we have talked about all the dimensions that sustainability should address within an organization, supported by KPIs, standards, and certifications, how to measure a company's carbon footprint that goes way beyond our own impact, the importance of integrating sustainability within the business model with the truly inspirational concepts of shared value and social innovation, and lastly, the importance of cross-sector partnerships for complex structural problems. It was an excellent journey led by a group of extremely interesting lecturers from different countries and complementary backgrounds. They enlightened us with many interesting and inspiring examples and opened the discussion across groups of participants from all over the world. This is already making an impact for me, and I recommend this course to everyone.
Just a small sample there, and we're getting some more testimonials shortly, and in a few minutes we'll talk a little bit more about the future of this course and the opportunities for further collaboration. I have a few other testimonials around the Dean's Cohort, but I'm just going to pause those for the moment. You all have access to the slides, and I see, in fact, we've got some of those people live on the call, so I would rather hear from them in person than play their videos. But before we start moving into the future, and I think this is where we kind of bridge into acting into the future, one other thing just to report on is our financials for the year, and also to have a preview of what lies ahead for next year. I will again just put up the slide, just make sure that you can see that. And very briefly then, just checking, anyone, my apologies, it is a little bit small, but basically that very first column is our interim standing for the year. That was at the end of October. Andre and Angela took a snapshot of our finances, and based on that, we projected the second column, which basically is where we think we will close the year on, and then that can be compared with the third column, which is what we budgeted for the year. So the highlights, just in terms of our projected position by the end of this year versus our budgeted position for the year, is that we will earn a little bit more income this year than we initially projected. We had, as I mentioned, a wonderful uptake at the associate partner level, but also some small revenue coming in from the Dean's Cohort, which I don't think is even fully reflected here yet because we're still just finalizing that. But we also had a higher than expected level of retention of existing partners and associates, and we're very, very thankful for that. So in terms of income, we're looking okay. Our personnel and other costs will be in line with what we expected, and we will be going slightly over on our variable costs, mainly due to us having to subsidize to some extent some of the work of getting the cohorts kick-started again, which of course we could not have done, and I want to acknowledge that, without the support of the Oasis School through their foundation, the Oasis Foundation, that underwrote the facilitation cost of the Dean's Cohort. And then of course, from our own reserves, we ensure that any other costs are covered. But we had a wonderful working arrangement with our associate partners in Antwerp. They hosted us in terms of a venue and wonderful content as well, and we'll hear more about that shortly. So all in all, for the year, we are basically able to service all our outgoings. And then going forward, we are faced, like everyone else, with the realities of increasing costs across the board. So what we are going to do is we're going to maintain a fairly conservative approach for next year. And we're proposing an inflationary alignment of 5% on our partner and associate fees. So just to put that into real terms, a partner that is invested over a number of years, typical fee is 3,800 euros per annum. That'll go up by 190 euros, and we're going to round it up so that it will be 4,000. So it's effectively a 5.1% increase. And then on the associate partners, that rounds up from 1,900 to 2,000. We were originally going to propose a 10% increase based on the very real situation of our inflation. However, in consultation with our guardians as partner representatives, we would like to take a 5% adjustment to the board. I should add, we did approve an increase about 3 years ago. Some of you may recall this. And of course, with the uncertainty around COVID, etc., we never applied any of it. And this will be the very first adjustment that we are making to GRLI's fees since our founding 20 years ago. If there's any feedback or comments for consideration on this that the board needs to take into account when they meet later this afternoon, please feel free to put it in the chat, or during the course of this meeting, just send an email to Claire, Maxwell, or to myself, just so that we have that on record for the board. But we want to, of course, give you the assurance that we are being very responsible with the funds of the GRLI, and that with what we have, we are going about responsibly, and that we are not looking for increases or adjustments that are, I think, out of the ordinary, but it's quite simply around our own sustainability. That's the more kind of business part of the year's update. So please put your comments in the chat. We can maybe, if there's anything in terms of highlights from the year that you just want to maybe mention or raise right now before we move into the next part of our meeting, you are more than welcome to do so. Please unmute yourself if there's anything that you want to add.
John, could I just add a board thanks to the Guardians for their work around the 5% increase as well, and that conversation about a shift from 10 to 5. It's incredibly helpful to have the Guardian perspective on that, so thanks to them.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not seeing any. I'm seeing love coming from Anna. Thank you, Anna, for the heart. That's wonderful. Okay. I want to suggest that we do take just a very short, maybe 5-minute break. I'll put some music on. We've got 1 or 2 people that are joining the call on the hour. And I just want to make sure that they are on the call, because they only have this short slot available to join us. Let's take 5 minutes, stretch our legs, and then we'll continue in 5 minutes from now. Okay, I think we've got everyone back here, and I see that Armand has dialed in. Vanessa, just checking that you've managed to get in. Sorry, I can't see everyone on screen. I need a bigger
Vanessa's
screen.
here.
I'm here.
Yeah, she's here.
There you go. Wonderful. Okay, excellent. Oh, hi, Armand's there. Okay, Vanessa. Okay, great. Let's continue. So the second part of our meeting, you just see Nick Ellaby's couch is looking very empty. Let's just see. Am I 30 seconds too early?
I think, yeah, just took us a few seconds, John, and then we can invite people to put their screens back on. That would be
okay. That's okay. We'll do that. Yeah. Okay. So
lovely. That's great.
Now there's someone on Nick's couch, so that's good, and I think it is him.
He went to do the snow angels.
Yes.
Oh, that would be lovely. That would be lovely. Tell me when you want me to start, John.
Let's see. Okay, everyone. So I think, no, JC's. Yeah, let's go ahead.
Okay.
Let's go ahead. Thank you very much.
Okay, my pleasure. So my role now is to talk us through governance. We're acting into the future and thinking about what that brings towards us in terms of the holding and steering of the GRLI, both through the board and the Guardian Group. And I will hand over to Vanessa Duckenfield very soon, who will share a Guardian update. But we cannot underestimate how fortunate we are to be steered by a strong and very committed GRLI board and the Guardian Group. And I know I speak on behalf of John and myself when I express our heartfelt thanks to everyone who gives of their time so generously to ensuring that we have rigour and that we operate with integrity, which is incredibly important to us all. And especially, I do want to say a special thank you to Vanessa, who I know has an incredibly busy work life and business life and gives of her time, again, so freely and so generously to us, and to all the group of Guardians from whom you'll be hearing soon. An annual AGM is a great opportunity to publicly recognise those who are immediately leaving their roles, former role on the board of the GRLI, and to ensure that a proper and formal thank you is given for their incredibly valuable contribution. Firstly, Julia, to you. I know you're jumping off shortly, so I'm just going to say this really quickly, but thank you so much. You are a deeply committed and engaged board member. It's a pleasure. It's been a pleasure to work with you on the board itself. And it's au revoir, I think, rather than goodbye, because you're going to stay connected to us through HESI as an advisor on the rating as rankings. And this conversation, the glimpse that we had earlier, may be a really good start for further and deeper conversations within and without the GRLI. Thank you, Julia, so very much.
Am I able to say a few words briefly?
You are, if you're not jumping off quite so quickly, of course you are.
No, I'm just getting close to my destination here, but just to say how precious, absolutely precious, all of you have been in the GRLI as organization on my leadership journey over the past 12 plus years. I absolutely got inspiration from all of our meetings at the GRLI as I was looking to build the Lang School of Business. So proud of what we got accomplished, but in no small measure, that was due to what I learned from all of you. So just feeling very humbled by all the organization has done to support me And I look forward to reconnecting down the road when I think my new business school is ready. And in fact, my university is ready to join as an organization. Yeah, this is a bit of a ta-da, like not a goodbye. I'll be back. And happy to keep working with Kathleen. I'm so grateful Kathleen's on the call today in the rankings and ratings work. I agree so much with the point made earlier about we have to understand the system in which we operate and how can we leverage change within that system to be better aligned with all the important work that we're trying to get done together. But anyway, it's been wonderful. Thank you all very much.
Thanks, Julia. Take care. We must also say a huge thank you to Sophie Charrois, who's also on the call from Oikos International, who is stepping down as co-president, I do apologize, co-president of Oikos. So Oikos has a seat on our board as a strategic partner, along with our valued partners, strategic partners, EFMD and AACSB. And Sophie, you've brought such a refreshing and much needed perspective to the board and our conversations and dialogue, and opened our minds completely and our hearts to a different perspective. So thank you so very much. You will be missed. We are very sorry to lose you, but the Queen is dead, long live the King. We look forward to welcoming a duo of co-presidents. I think Carolyn Lemke had to step down from the call, but was on earlier. And I'm delighted to see Daria Milicek, you're here. If you'd like to just give everybody, that's great. So
I think Carolyn is here, but she is going to have to step off shortly.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay. So looking forward. So Sophie, deeply sorry that this next hour is going to be, or the hour after this is going to be your last board meeting, but we look forward very much to welcoming Carolyn and Daria to the board. As many of you, oh, I'm so sorry, Sophie, did you want to say?
No, just saying it's been a pleasure, and I'm so sure that Kathleen will bring even more inspiring and needed perspectives. And we're happy to be connected and to hear yours, actually. Great,
that's great. So again, it could be an au revoir rather than a goodbye, Sophie, which would be brilliant. Excellent, thank you. As many of Carolyn Beck-Dudley will be stepping down from her position as President and CEO of AACSB International in the middle of next year. There'll be further opportunities to acknowledge the value the GRLI places on our relationship with AACSB in general, and with Karen in particular. But in the meantime, we're working with Karen to ensure a smooth transition to her successor. So, to the future. In terms of the board, for the first time ever, we've created a role for a chair-elect, and that will take effect 6 months before the current term of office ends, which is in June 2023. So as per our terms of reference, the chair of the board is chosen from amongst the partner representatives, and we're fortunate indeed to have such strong partner representation on the board. So following recommendations from the Governance Committee to the board, we are very pleased to announce that Peter Møllgaard, who is also on the call. Peter, I don't know if you want to give everybody a wave so that they can know. And I'm going to hand over to Peter in a moment for him to introduce himself. Peter's accepted the role of chair-elect for 6 months, and then he will assume, all things being equal, and if we haven't annoyed him too much, he'll assume the role of chair of the board. So Peter is a former Dean of Maastricht School of Management, which is a current GRLI partner, and having returned to his homeland, is currently Dean at the University of Southern Denmark. In addition, Peter's a board member of AACSB and chair of the Danish Council on Climate Change. We all feel very fortunate indeed, Peter, that you're stepping into this role, and I'm delighted to invite you to introduce yourself.
What can I say? It's with some trepidation that I step into those big shoes that, or will at some point, that you fill, Claire, because it's really a marvelous job that you have done. And I hope to live up to that great standard that you are setting. So that's the first thing. As you said, I recently changed jobs and country, although it's back to my home country. For the past 6 months, I've been the Dean of the Faculty of Business and Social Sciences at University of Southern Denmark. And that's, of course, means it's 10,000 students. It's 750 heads of staff and faculty, so it's a relatively big place. And it's the first time I have not worked in a Triple Crown accredited school. So there's quite a lot of stuff to do. I'm working on a sustainability strategy for the school now, a strategy that focuses on sustainability. But this also means that I'm rather busy and more inward looking than I would normally be at this point. And I'm apologizing a bit to John and Claire, especially, that my response times are normal and are longer than normal for the same reason. But come summer, I will also have been there for a year, and we'll have my new faculty, my new school, with a new strategy. And moving forward, my goal is to be Triple Crown accredited by, that's a stretch goal, in 5 years from now when my term ends. So that, thank you, Anders, but it's a stretch goal, right? It's not, it doesn't come easy. We are in the process of applying for a AACSB accreditation now. And I've been working, my background is in energy economics, so that's also why I'm moonlighting as chair of the Danish Council on Climate Change, advising the Danish government on the rather ambitious, how to achieve the rather ambitious Danish goal for greenhouse gas reductions. I could talk a long time on that, I won't. But just say that apart from what is already mentioned, thank you, Claire, for the nice introduction, I'm also on the board of AACSB. So I look forward also to combining those roles as chair-elect for GRLI with the role in AACSB. I think we can get a lot of impact there as well. And if there are any questions or comments, I'm happy to take those.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank
you very much indeed. We look forward to working even more closely with you. John, I think I'm going to hand, or am I handing to Vanessa? I'm straight to, well, in that case, a seamless handover, Vanessa, to you, if I may, for your update.
Thank you, Claire. I sit here and I'm reminded of the annual rhythm of AGMs, and the last couple I've had potential of a child jumping on my knee or homeschooling in the middle of it. So I'm feeling quite relieved today that it's just me sat in this room talking to you all. But over the past year, we've continued to shape our approach to governance and how we develop and hold the Guardians group. As we spoke last year, we said goodbye to some Guardians and we were welcoming new ones. So this year, our approach has shifted to a more distributed model of governance, where our Guardians are connected to various strands of GRLI activity and are acting as stewards of our approach and values across many initiatives, of which you've seen some of today, and holding the connections with our network of partners. In 2022, our geographic reach and emerging from the pandemic has created new challenges for our approach to connecting together and engagement. And we're continually learning how we come together, in what time zones and in what capacity, but to continue to work on the emerging questions and the role that we play in considering the I, we and all of us together. So in 2023, I look forward not only to how we hold the guardianship of the GRLI, but how I personally and professionally continue to learn, shape and grow because of my relationships within the grouping. I really am in awe of the members' experience, care, curiosity and wisdom that is held and shaped within that group, and also what I get personally from that. So as chair, I'd like to share my thanks, but also personally to all Guardians in sustaining their role and commitment to the group, their actions, their individual work they have with John, the individual work that they're doing within the network of partners, especially in incredibly stretching times. The commitment remains throughout. So to Adrian, Nicola, Romina, Anna, Florencia, Simon, Hannah, Lana and Jeff, my sincere thanks. I'm really looking forward to picking up together in the new year with you all. And I'd also like to take the opportunity to warmly welcome Armand Bam, who this month has been appointed as a guardian-elect in the partner category, and he represents Stellenbosch Business School. So thank you, Armand, and on behalf of the Guardians Group, we really look forward to working with you over the coming year. I don't know if you have any words to say, John or Armand, on joining.
Let's turn to Armand, because I know he's in the middle of a budget meeting, and maybe we can just hear a few words. Armand, if you can unmute yourself. Thanks.
Thanks, John. Thanks, colleagues. I got locked in the budget room now. So I was trying to navigate my way out of there. But thank you very much. It's my pleasure. I'm glad to see some familiar faces, people that I've met along my journey coming into Stellenbosch Business School. A little bit about myself very quickly. I head up the Business School Social Impact Portfolio. My particular interest is around disability, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so the lens, if we have to talk about the lens that I view our challenges in this world with, is a social justice lens. So I hope to bring and contribute the views, or at least some views from the South, and just share my experiences coming from the nonprofit sector and also working within an academic institution at this stage. Peter, I had the pleasure of working with some Maastricht students last week, and they blew me away in class. I really appreciated that interaction as well. And thank you, Vanessa, for the introduction. John, Claire, wonderful to see all the faces again.
Thank you. Thanks, Claire.
Thanks, Armand, for joining us. Thank you, Vanessa and Claire, for giving us those governance updates. And also from my side, thank you to the both of you for the work that you do effortlessly with both the board and the Guardians. So I think then what we're now moving into looking at some of what's in the pipeline or already underway. And I hope to share the updates that follow with a few of you that are on the call. Let me go back into my slide mode. Just give me a second. We can come back to the timeline a bit later, but maybe just to say at this point that much of what we're going to be discussing and sharing now, some of those initiatives or events still need firmer dates against them. And our hope is that in the couple of weeks before the holidays, we can firm up some of those dates so that you can have an updated calendar published before the end of this year. So I'm not going to spend much time looking at that right now. What I want to do is I want to turn over to Chris and Lana just to give us a quick update on where the Courageous Conversations are going. And so we'll take it from here. And then there will be an opportunity towards the end of the call if there's anything else that we missed. And what I will also do for those of you that haven't realized yet, but you can all open the slides at your own end and comment on them if you have anything that you want to add. So you can just click on that link on the chat. Chris, Lana, over to you.
Thanks, John. I was interested in the questions that arose in the first feedback after the breakout rooms about, are we being radical enough? Are we doing enough? Are we staying ahead of the curve enough? And I think the Courageous Conversations are a place where we can have that dialogue. The idea has really been to, I'm going to mix my metaphors, but has been to reveal the elephants in the room, to break the taboos, to shine a spotlight on the question of, are we rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic? So we're trying to deal with the kind of those meta level questions. So last year we looked at the question of the prospect of global collapse and how do we address that, and how do we keep a sense of hope and agency within that context. This year the plan is to do things slightly differently. The plan is to have a Courageous Conversation every quarter, and for each one to be hosted by a different GRLI partner. So what we're looking for is for partners who are holding a particular question that they find there are no easy answers for, and a question that is at that kind of a meta level. So we have some suggestions in the pipeline, so working around issues of decolonization, issues around perspectives from the Global South, for example, and the role of business schools within the Global South. So those are suggestions that are arising, but we're looking for other partners who might have similar questions that Lana and I can work with to host a conversation every quarter. Lana, do you want to jump in?
And I would like to also voice out that in the breakout room, it has been voiced by our group how much they enjoy the courageous conversations. And this is also why, continuing with it was a big pleasure when Chris mentioned it to me, mainly because I find this as a juicy topics to explore, and at the same time, how can we explore it and then bring it back to the organizations that we're part of? So this is not just keeping it on a conversational level, but really stretching our muscles of, okay, now that we've had conversations around it, in what ways can we then apply it to ourselves, to us, and then to the organizations that we're part of?
So if you'd like to be part of hosting one of these conversations, if you feel like you're holding a question that is at that kind of leading edge, then you can contact John or contact Lana or I, and our emails are in the slides there. Thanks, John.
Thank you very much, Chris. I'm going to do the next update, but I'm inviting anyone who's been part of this to contribute. We touched on it earlier. We will run the collaborative course again from the 6th of March until the 16th of May. I would like to point out a few things for those that are not delivering a module on this. You are still able to contribute, to benefit from this. And in fact, we need to view this at a more meta level, because the learning of collaborating in this way is the ultimate, I think, the ultimate benefit here for the GRLI in our work. Even though we basically set for the intake in March, you are welcome to refer students to take this particular short course if you have some exec ed students that would qualify. If you are not contributing a module, you are encouraged to consider forming additional clusters around collaborative courses, and the GRLI can support that as well. But what we also want to ensure is that the material and the recordings of the upcoming intake is made available to our partner and associate representatives. At our last meeting, we agreed that when they prepare the recording, let's say for the module on sustainability, accounting and reporting, which Sheila Killian and Philippa Regan are presenting, that recording, that 1 hour recording, will be made available to GRLI partners and associates on request, so that it can benefit your curriculum development as well. What we, just some key dates for students that want to enroll. There's an expression of interest form on the website that's going to close on the 14th of February. Then the registration and placement by the 21st. And there's some data privacy that's completed. The classrooms gets opened. And then we have our opening session on the 6th of March. For students referred by GRLI partners and associates that are not delivering, what we are going to do is the partner or associate that refers that student earns 20% from the revenue of that particular fee. 20% then goes to the GRLI Foundation. The module provider that registered the student will earn 15% because the student will need to register with one of the 7 providers. And then the remaining 45%, if that adds up correctly, I don't think it does. There's 10% missing, so we just need to look at that. But the delivery component is then weighted between the different module providers. I don't know if John Knights. John, are you on the call?
Yeah, I'm here.
I must have mistyped something. My apologies.
It adds up to 100 to me.
20, 45, that's 90. Oh no, sorry, it's sorry, my apologies. You're right. My apologies. Okay.
That's all right.
So I just want to check, is there any questions just from those that are perhaps still interested in this? We've created the brochure. It's got some testimonials which you heard. It's got an overview of the different modules that are being presented. There's a form for expressing your interest. And then if you fill this out, if a student fills that out, they can specify where they heard about this particular course, if it's from one of the existing providers or one of the others, and they can specify so that we can trace them back. So I just want to check, is there anything from those who've been involved or any others that have any questions about this? I'm just checking.
John, just a quick question. Sorry.
Sure, Matthew.
Sorry. Do they get credit scores for this? Because I think if that could be included, it would have great value. I think it's a brilliant program, and I think I like the idea of being able to share the modules and building the community behind that. But I just wonder, it's an add-on to the program they're doing, or is it actually fully recognized by the schools?
So let's start. I think, Jeff, can you maybe start with just responding to that, and then anything else that you want to contribute?
Yeah, just a couple things, and thank you. The collaboration has been really wonderful. Loyola Marymount University offers it as an MBA course, and so they would receive graduate credit for that MBA course. We also are looking at also offering a smaller version of it as an executive ed program. So for that, they would receive a certificate, and that was what they received last time. One other thing that's really important for us is to offer this both synchronous and asynchronous. So we have scheduled the sessions moving forward to try to accommodate time zones, but in terms of fitting it in within the bandwidth of our students, giving them the opportunity of real asynchronous access to the modules, but then working collaboratively in the global teams is also a pathway to enter that has been an important part of how we've offered it. And that has worked. They don't get the global network direct experience. That's a deficit, but they do get profound benefit from the program overall. And so it's still of great value.
Can the program be found on the GRLI website if there are some students of from some of the partners who will grasp information directly from the GRLI website? I don't see the information on the website.
Yeah, so the brochure that I just shared was just launched last week. We're going to load it onto the GRLI website on the front page, yes. We'll do that probably tomorrow.
Okay.
If I could just say one thing, and that is that those members who are not part of delivering the module, I think that if they can bring a few students into this program, it's a great way of getting a soft introduction into how it's all put together. And I think that we've all had great learning on how to collaborate in a very informal and value-based way, which hasn't required hardly any bureaucracy, I would say.
Okay, thanks, John. Okay, shall we move on to the next? So if there are any further questions, you're welcome to contact me. Give me a call on WhatsApp or drop me a note, and we'll have it on the website tomorrow here, now that the brochure is ready. I'm going to ask Wayne, because I don't think Ilse is on the call. Wayne, can you please just give us an update on the Global Leadership Skills Program?
Yeah, sure. So this came out of the Deans and Directors Cohort, where we shared with those who were there some insights into what we were doing, one of which is around this course that we have, the Global Leadership Skills course, which all of our full-time master students have to do. It's compulsory. And it's quite unique in that it has these three components of self-awareness, leadership, global perspectives, and societal awareness. And at the core of it is an action learning project around the Sustainable Development Goals. And we shared it just in the spirit of sharing what might be interesting, but we got some positive reactions. And the question, could this be shared or implemented or delivered in some shape or form at other universities, other business schools? So that's what we've been exploring a little bit with Exeter, LMU, and ISCTE. And we've come up with, we haven't settled on anything, but we've come up with various options where we think we may be able to. And they range in terms of either actually delivering it on at different institutions, to more of a train the trainer, where we empower faculty to probably adapt and deliver it themselves. There's also a global leadership skills workbook, which the students get to work with, which contains a lot of the knowledge and the models and the frameworks. And we're busy updating that. And one of the questions we still have is whether we might do GRLI or a global version of that could also support such a course. And so we're at the stage where we haven't made any final decisions, but we wanted to share more broadly to say that this is an initiative that's going forward. And, exactly how we do it, whether we do it bilaterally or multilaterally, just with the institutions that are interested, or whether we actually do it as a GRLI offering, all of that is still to be discussed and agreed. And so I think that's an overview, an introduction.
Thanks, Wayne. And maybe just to add that what we will do is, as part of the debrief of this AGM, we will circulate the form or the spreadsheet that Ilse has prepared that you can fill out. So along with the recording of today's call, but there you will also be able to express your interest. And of course, there's a link to the material on AMS's website.
Yeah, that form will give us an idea of how you might be interested to engage. So would it be part of a full-time course? Would it be something, an elective? Is it something that you want to develop and deliver yourself, adapt and deliver yourself, and so on? So it just helps us to figure out what kind of interest there is out there, and then that we take it from there.
Thank you very much. I think our next item is around the impact working group, and Anna is going to add something. Just checking, I didn't see any hands based. Sorry, was there anyone who wants to clarify anything with Wayne on the global leadership skills? Okay, we can always come back to that. Okay, Anna, if you can. Sorry, I must. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you, John. So hello, everyone. So the idea of this impact working group was born during the Dean's Cohort in Antwerp last September. And in one of the discussions, some of us came together with this topic of impact and how hard it is for business schools not only to grasp what is out there, but also sometimes to go beyond some more output-oriented type of measures that we have. So there are different frameworks, we acknowledge that, and we also share this hard task of putting in place an impact model for our schools. We had an initial discussion and conversation a few days ago who participated was so John from GRLI, and myself from HKT Business School, Vito was from Sassin, and also we have Bachelin and Jan from Antwerp Management School. So the idea is not, and that was very well stressed, The idea is not to come up with a new way of impact measurement, but to, on the one hand, understand what is out there, the benchmark, and identify what are the different areas of impact, because different frameworks address different areas in a different way sometimes. So we have to comply with different accreditation bodies or other types of methodologies that we may be using at our, or not, at our business schools. So we want to first to get a sense of what is out there, identify these areas, and then dig into the existing frameworks in terms of these different areas. And as I mentioned, it's not about finding a new measurement, but to identify a set of baseline measurement that, let's say, if you can say, any business school should address or could address, and then of course space for customization depending on our own reality, which is very much desired. So the idea is to harmonize and to see what are the connections, the potential links between the different frameworks that can help business schools, because I think we all in the call were facing this struggle, which is there is so much out there. How can we put something together for our own business schools? So you are welcome to join the group if you want. Just drop me an email, and we are happy to continue this conversation afterwards. John, you are in the call. I don't know if you want to add something to this.
No, nothing from my side. I think it's very much starting out, but this seems to be hugely relevant. And so thank you, Anna, for taking the initiative, and for those that have joined her, Jan and Katrina. And yeah, we're really happy that this is taking off.
And Vasu is here as well. Sorry, Vasu,
And
you are here as well.
sorry,
Yeah.
is Vasu there? Okay, sorry, I wasn't sure.
Mm.
And by the way, speaking of Vasu and Sasim, one of the small testimonials that we have in the video, if you want to have a look at that, is of Vasu's director, Ian, who was also at the meeting in Antwerp, speaking very eloquently about the need to create and measure impact in a different way. Okay, so moving on to the next item then. So this, you may recall at one point last year, we were talking about holding up a mirror to the ecosystem. I just want to give a little bit of context here. When Kemi hosted our AGM in 2016, the theme was common good, common ground, and it was groundbreaking. We thought, okay, let's get the GRLI partners and the GRME champions put together so that at our AGM, it's more than just the GRLI working. And then that was followed up a couple of years later when Jean-Christophe, when he was still at Cage Business School, helped put together an event that brought 12 different networks and initiatives together from around the responsible management education landscape. There's a very clear need to convene across networks and initiatives to really work beyond the logo of the GRLI, and I often adapt or adopt, either way, the title of our Friends at Leadership's book, Beyond the Ego, to say we need to work beyond the logo. So to this end, what we want to do is we want to propose a very straightforward globally responsible management education webinar series that that covers key topics, but that brings members and participants in various networks together. So when we had a recent affinity group meeting for AACSB, the Responsible Management Education Affinity Group, we volunteered, and I had a number of GRLI supporters on the call in the form of Kathy Dubois at Kent, and more remotely Amanda Goodmanson at QUT, and also at Louise Business School. Currently, Matthias is chairing that affinity group. So we had a number of GRLI linked people on the call. We said, okay, let's host such a webinar series. And we ask the African Association, CLADIA, ABIS, GBSN, PRME, etc., to co-endorse this. And we've started putting together a very high-level list of potential topics. We're starting to identify some potential co-conveners, in other words, networks and initiatives, organizations that may be willing to co-host that particular topic. We're even starting to think about some provisional coordinators or facilitators per topic. We want to do between 4 and 6 webinars next year, 1 hour maximum. The format is the discussion panel per event, where we have 3 or 4 voices that addresses a particular topic, and then of course circulate the recordings across all the networks. So in that sense, the GRLI acts as the, let's call it the initiating catalyst, but we really would like to see all the various networks and initiatives co-own this. So this is very much still in the works. Your suggestions, input, and of course co-ownership of this is very much welcomed, and I would like to add needed. But there seems to be some energy and traction around this. I'm happy to take questions and suggestions on this. If there's anyone, I don't think any of the people that were on the original call are here today, but if there's anything, any kind of immediate reflections, happy to hear from you. I'm not seeing, sorry, I'm just, please just speak up if you have anything to add, because I'm finding it difficult to track all the faces on the screen. Okay. Okay. Oh, yeah, JC.
No, I don't know if it's stupid or not, and I don't know if it's supposed to be a webinar, but just sharing an experience, and we discussed with that about, with John. As you, I absolutely love the me, we, all of us, or the I, we, all of us. And since I quit my previous job to become a social entrepreneur, we tried to apply what was a nice concept into a management system. And I don't know if it's something relevant to share, because we experiment some really interesting thing, how we organize, how we set up an organization based on me, we, all of us, in terms of process of decision, etc., etc. I don't know if it's now, I don't know if it's a webinar, but actually it's something that I can share if you want once and show the dynamic and the challenge with that. Yeah. Quite interesting.
Yeah, Jesse, I'm really glad that you mentioned that, because in terms of upcoming updates, it's basically to say that we've got the Dean's Cohort and we've got the dialogue series. Maybe you can just say a little bit more whilst you're on the mic and before you need to go. Maybe you can just say a little bit more about this, because this could either become something that goes into the courageous conversations, or it could become a webinar for the wider landscape.
Yeah, okay. So just in 1 minute, I didn't know how to transfer a concept into something which is concrete. Just give you an example. So we tried to plug all the process in the organization based on those 3 levels. For instance, I give you really the first tangible example. One of my colleagues who is living in Brazil, we had a seminar, so she has to come to France, and she say, "Hey, Jesse, what do you think about that flight?" And I say, "I don't think anything, I don't care, and I think if I spend time to check what you are doing, if it's the right flight or not, I'm not doing my job as the boss of a company." And he said, "Okay, but how can we help people to take the best decision?" So we built a kind of grid on me, we, all of us, for a trip, travel, okay? So for me, we try to describe what are the nice things on the me, right? It's nice because I can sleep, it's nice because it's not at 2 o'clock in the morning, it's nice because it's not 40 hours, it's nice. So we try to put all those kind of things. Then for the we say, okay, what does it mean for the company? Okay, for the company, but the cost, of course, it's something that we have to take into account. And then at the end, and then of course, if you can work because you are in the train, it's better than if you are in the car or if you are in the plane. So this is the we. And all of us, we took the CO2 emissions. And actually, so now every time that we travel in the company, we put, everyone has to do some options like that. So it's easy, it doesn't take years. But by doing that, and then at the end, they have to say, this is my preference. It doesn't mean that we're going to accept that, but at least we we value the fact that the 3 levels are really important. If we want to change the system, we need to work on those 3 levels. And so we tried, so it was the first one. We do that for the event. We're even thinking about the salary, how we organize that. So we're trying to explore, try to push the concept quite far in practice. So if, again, it's not, we just launched that 1 year ago when we finalized the fundraising, but at least, yeah, it could be something interesting because, yeah,
great.
It's concrete.
Thanks, JC. Thank you very much. We'll record that, and I see Sophie says that they've also have a decision-making framework that may be of relevance, and some comments from Oti. Thank you very much, Oti. So I'm conscious of the fact that there's so much happening that we are potentially running out of time in terms of doing our update. So what I'm going to do is because the last 2 updates, I just had a note from Dima saying that she's still traveling from Kuwait to Dubai, so she can't join us to do the update on the Dean's Cohort right now. And then of course Nicola is in a very difficult time zone, so she won't be able to join us either. So just the last 2, the Dean's Cohort is hosted by Sharjah in October. The exact date to be confirmed. We're just working that out with Dima. But there will be a presence of the GRLI at both the EFMD Deans Conference in January in Madrid. So a number of the deans that are part of the cohort may be interested in connecting there. And then I will also be at the AACSB Deans Conference in San Antonio in February, where we have an opportunity to present something at the affinity group meeting. Please, if you are a dean thinking of attending any of those, please do get in touch with me so that we can coordinate. Or if you know that your dean, if you're not a dean and you know that your dean is going to be there, please encourage them to get in touch with me. We'll do a virtual check-in for the deans in March. And then we've also had confirmation that in 2024, March 2024, there will be another in-person event hosted by Stellenbosch Business School, Mark Smith, the dean there. And we're even thinking of maybe turning that into a larger GRI gathering potentially, but we will announce more on that shortly. And then the last one that I just needed to give an update on was on the Responsible Leadership Dialogue, where we have a video series being developed by Nicola. She would like us to leverage that more, enhance the usage and the views of that. So we're developing some ideas. If you are interested in supporting the video series or helping promote it or using it, please do get in touch with myself or Nicola Place. So I'm going to wrap that and suggest that we have our closing conversation, which is around what do we weave into 2023 beyond what's already happening towards 2030. And the context for this conversation is, and we're not going to do it in breakout for the sake of time. Context for this conversation is that, as you may know, we've extended the lifetime of our initiative to 2030, so it aligns with the UN's 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. And we may go out with a bang or a whimper, as Elliot would have said. However, we know that it's only through the actions and energy of our partners and our associates that we will shape our journey up to then and perhaps beyond, if we decide that indeed the GRLI needs to continue beyond 2030. So I thought, let's keep this conversation in here for the moment. If there are any reflections or suggestions or maybe ideas that we can take into a future conversation around what we weave into the GRLI's work towards 2030. So this is really an open-ended side to the conversation today. And we can keep this open until roughly 10 past the hour when the board meeting starts. I'm going to open the mics. If anyone would like to come in here, that would be wonderful.
I'm happy to plant a first seed.
Great, thanks, John.
And that is, if we think about the education that most of us have had, it's been very linear. And they tend to be the way that we look at solving problems. And I think that it's really important in this increasingly complex world that we need to be looking at going from Newtonian to quantum approaches to things. And I think systems thinking is becoming so important, yet it is still a very young science or technology. I don't profess to be an expert on it. I read a certain amount, but I'm certainly not an expert. But I think it's something that we really need to address, because one of the reasons why the world is in the mess it's in is because of the consequences of the actions that we've taken. And when we take those actions, we don't think about the consequences. I can think of things I've done personally that in hindsight were not very good. For example, which I'm kind of ashamed of now, but I'll be open about it anyway. And that is that 40 years ago, I was involved in negotiating a license to the Chinese for coal-fired power plants. At the time, there was just no discussion or mention about the effects on climate. And so I just think that we really need to be thinking about consequences and causes much more than we do when we're making our decision, when we're doing our decision making.
Thank you very much, John, and also for sharing that. I think let's maybe see if there are two more comments, and I see there's some suggestions already around systems thinking. Maybe two more comments so that we can ensure that we all end together today. But I'm sure that there's someone who's ready to perhaps share. If you don't want to do it out loud, please feel free to use the chat.
Nobody else wants to go, then I suggest that we play the first game in the book that I recommended.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. It's difficult to see you all, but could you please cross your arms?
Okay.
And then look at which wrist is on top.
Okay.
Yeah. And then just relax a bit. And then do it again, but now have the other wrist on top. Are you sure you're doing it right? So you have to think about it, right? It's a great little conversation starter about habits and how you can change habits also, but you have to think about it. And then the lessons learned for climate policy and how you change habits over time. That's it's a very innocent little game to play, and it works well with almost all class sizes. And you can, of course, you can elaborate some more about the usefulness of changing habits for climate policy and climate change and reductions of greenhouse gas emissions and all that. Anyway, so that's the first one. That's and if you can always take the next chapter, and that would take longer then. But it's a great book. Highly recommended.
Thank you very much, Peter. That's indeed, I think, a good highlight and a good reminder for us to end on, is that whilst some habits are a little bit more difficult to change, it does start with that recognition and that awareness. Claire, you wanted to add something before we...
Yeah, because I think we're coming to a close and it is just coming up to 2 o'clock, but it would be remiss, having thanked everybody else, John, not to acknowledge the commitment that Anders makes behind the scenes. And he wouldn't wish me to labour this too much, but I do want to thank him enormously for his continued commitment to the GRLI. And I'm so glad that you were recognised, Anders, in different ways over this year. So huge thank you to you.
Thank you very much, Claire. And this is wonderful and lovely to be together with all of you. It makes my life.
And finally, John, it's extraordinarily breathtaking to experience the breadth and the depth that the GRLI has gone through over the last year and what's coming towards us, which is enormous. Thank you to everyone who's enabled us to increase our possibilities of sustainability and viability through the 5% increase. Much appreciated. Your continued commitment, but John, particularly to you, a huge thank you for all you do and bring.
Thank you very much, everyone. It's a huge privilege and I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining our call today. We'll circulate a recording and with that a few of the keynotes from the meeting. Have a lovely day, and for those of you who are in the board meeting, we'll kick off in about 10 minutes from now.
Thanks, everyone.
Great.
Nice to see you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Lovely to
Thanks.
see you.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
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 Thanks, everyone. Best wishes.